insurance. Save on Hyundais. Save at the pump at Leah Hyundai in Albany or LeahHyundaiofAlbany.com.
Leah!
Welcome back to Capital OTV's The Inside Track. We are joined now by our second special guest of the morning. Welcome to the program, Trainer Graham Motion. Good morning, Graham, and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It's always nice to have you here on the program, and we appreciate your time. I know you've just come over from horses working over on the turf course on the far side of the complex. Tell us a little bit about your background. Obviously, the last few years you've become a little bit better known after having Animal Kingdom win the Derby last year. A little of your equine background.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest education or my start in the game was with Jonathan Shepherd, who everybody knows up here, certainly. I worked for Jonathan for 5 years. I spent a year in France after that, which is where I met my wife. And then I came back to work for a lesser-known 2-year-old trainer in Maryland called Bernie Bond, who was kind of the matriarch of 2-year-old racing. He would win the first 2-year-old races every year in Maryland. So I had a broad education from Jonathan to Bernie with the 2-year-olds.
And following in the tradition of Jonathan Shepherd, who trains horses at his own farm in Pennsylvania, you have your horses mainly not on track, but at Fair Hill down in Maryland.
Yeah, and it's a similar concept to Jonathan's. Fair Hill's a great facility. We have a Tapeta track, we have a dirt track, and we also have grass gallops, so we kind of have the best of everything.
And a terrific opportunity to get horses out and about and just not doing the routine that you see here on track.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's much more restrictive when you're training on the racetrack. There's only a certain amount of things you can do. Although up here at Saratoga, we have a lot of different options. We have the turf gallop at Oklahoma. We have a different surface at Oklahoma. So it's a similar concept up here.
And obviously, last year, you really found yourself in the spotlight for the, I don't want to say for the first time, but in the mainstream for the first time. With Animal Kingdom, and unfortunately this year he missed a bid in the World Cup. How's he doing?
Yeah, he's doing great. He's very close to having his first workout. He should breeze within the next 2 weeks, and that would place him maybe starting sometime late in the fall.
It'd be good to know that they're going to bring him back, and Team Valor pretty game in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, Barry really wants to race this horse, and so do the partners, And personally, I'd like to get him back and sort of prove that the Derby wasn't a fluke, because he's certainly the best horse I've ever trained. He's a spectacular horse, this horse, and I hope we get to come back and show that.
And that's really saying something when you look at some of the horses that you have in your barn. Nice to see Toby's Corner, who was a horse that I was a big fan of last year, get back.
Yeah, it was great to get him back on track last weekend at Penn National. Yeah. I mean, he set a track record, which was, that was really encouraging to see him getting back to his Wood Memorial form.
That certainly was good. I was there for the Wood Memorial, and I was very excited about the win. So I'm glad to see him back after having had some time off.
What's next for him?
I really hadn't gone beyond that race, and actually right now there's a little bit of a gap. Unless I come up here and run in the stake at the end of the month, which I think would be a big step for him right now. I'm not sure I'm ready just to throw him back into Grade 1 competition.
How do you decide that kind of thing? I mean, is it a race-by-race thing when horses are kind of on the comeback? You're going race by race and deciding what level of competition is right for them to step up to next time?
Yeah, definitely with him. He lost his form there a little bit, so I was taking it race by race. With a filly like Aruna, I really have strategic goals for her for the rest of the year. But with him, it's kind of a matter of finding a way a little bit, and I want to step him up again, but I don't want to throw him to the wolves, if you like.
And I know you have Sakara in this afternoon. Just give us a little idea about her in the weigh-in.
Yeah, this filly came to me in the spring. I think she's a filly that doesn't necessarily need 1.5 miles, but I thought she ran well going 1 3/8. I think this will be a big test for her today. This is a very competitive race for an overnight stake. It's a very competitive race. Most of the horses from the Robert Dick, which was a graded race, are back in there. But if she runs back to her Robert Dick race, I think she'll be very competitive.
They're all tough up here, aren't they?
They certainly are.
It was the Marvin, which finally got earned the graded designation this year, but in previous years that race was kind of crazy.
There's barely a stake up here that shouldn't be graded, quite frankly.
It's tough. I want to ask you, with Sakara, this is a horse that transferred over from Europe, a European import, so to speak, and now has had a couple of starts for you in the United States. What are the challenges of a horse that comes over from Europe? Do you have to acclimate them to racing here, and what kind of things do you do with a European that comes over to the United States?
Yeah, this filly came to me in the spring, so the weather was a little more temperate. It was a little milder for her. I think it's tough for the horses that come over right now when we really have this hot weather. But she's had a chance to kind of adjust with it as it's come along, and some of them handle it very easily, some of them take longer. It's more a matter of the horse, the individual.
And as Gene alluded to, the training overseas is a little different than it is here. Is it easier for you, being that you are at Fairhill, and it's maybe a little more similar to European methods?
I think it is, because I think the racetrack can be a shock to them. You know, all of a sudden they've got horses coming every
Yeah.
direction. It's definitely a change. You know, mostly if you're at the racetrack, you have to breeze on the dirt, and I have the option of breezing on the synthetic or the grass. So, no, I think it definitely helps the transition. It makes it a little smoother.
Now, let me ask you, you had workouts today, and of course they work over, you were Oklahoma, correct?
Yeah, we actually didn't get to go.
I was going to
grass
ask
was
what
too
the
soft.
grass
Yeah.
was like. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we didn't get to do it this morning, so hopefully we'll get to go tomorrow or Wednesday.
Okay, very good. And I just want to ask, certainly Saratoga is all about the 2-year-olds, and I see you have coming up Asunder up here by Stormy Atlantic, which we were talking to George Weaver about one of his horses that had some win early breeding. I think with Stormy Atlantic on top, that looks kind of interesting. What do you think for Asunder this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a horse that could go turf or dirt. He's breezed well on both surfaces, but you know, I think sometimes it's a little easier for them to start on the turf. They don't get all the kickback in their faces. So, look, he's acted precocious. Hopefully he fits. But again, you never know with these 2-year-old races. They're pretty
Yeah,
competitive.
absolutely. There's no
Yeah, you
question
can-
about that.
You know, you think you've got your horse as ready as he can possibly be, which is all you really can do, and the next thing you know, somebody's got some kind of a real monster. But, you know, I think he looks interesting in that spot as well, and especially the Stormy Atlantics, we've seen how well they go onto the, you know, onto the turf, and I think that stands him in pretty good stead. Another horse you have, speaking of nice horses on the turf, How Great. He was a very interesting 3-year-old down in Florida over the winter time.
Yeah, he's
What's
a
his-
useful
what's
horse.
his
I mean,
status?
we'd considered running him in the Hall of Fame, but I think we're going to wait and probably run him in the Del Mar Derby. You know, I needed to get him back. He won nicely in the Jersey Derby right at the beginning of this meet, and right now we're pointing him for the Del Mar Derby.
Going to go all out to California. You know, what's funny is in California, the 3-year-old division in the summer seems to suddenly shift onto the turf when they get to Del Mar. The Colts. Here at Saratoga, you know, not as much. I think there might be a little more prestige there up in that Del Mar.
Yeah, he's a horse that particularly handles the tighter track. Del Mar's kind of a tight turf track. He handled Gulfstream very well, and that seems to be his forte, is handling these tight, firm racetracks.
And obviously, there's a pretty good chance that they'll get a very firm track out here. The way things have been here in Saratoga,
Yeah, you never
maybe
know.
not so
yeah.
much. But you were able to get in on the turf yesterday before they came off the turf and picked up a win with another European shipper.
Yeah, this horse looks like he's got a bright future. I was a little concerned at one point we weren't going to get to run on the grass yesterday, but I thought he won very comfortably. They didn't finish up very fast, but the turf was already getting pretty slick, so I thought it was a pretty powerful race.
Yeah, and we had the tremendous downpour that took the races off the turf right after you ran. So that was in that case some pretty good timing for getting him in here. Tell us a little bit now. Obviously, I think most people associate you with turf horses because you know have a European background and so forth. Yet Animal Kingdom handled the transfer over onto the main track very, very well. Tell us a little about how you decide if you're going to switch a horse over or what surface you're going to go to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these European horses, you know, it's a no-brainer with their pedigrees that they're going to handle the turf. You're always a little reluctant. You know, there's so much more turf racing in this country now than there used to be several years ago, so we have a lot more options. With the 2-year-olds, I think it's all about, you know, pedigrees and kind of finding out where they're comfortable. And like I said earlier, I often like to start them on the turf. I think it's a little easier for them. They don't get the kickback. But it's kind of a learning process.
Seems like there's so much more turf racing up here at Saratoga than we usually have. And speaking of Saratoga, as George Weaver and I say, I always like to ask trainers, because racing in the 21st century is so different now with people being able to bet at home and whatnot. A lot of tracks don't get the crowds. But what does it mean to you as a trainer to come and play in front of a full house like this?
Oh yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, everybody wants to win up here, and now, you know, we have the added incentive that the purses are phenomenal up here. But look, I mean, to win up here, I think it accounts for so much. It's great to be part of the atmosphere, and it's what racing's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I was saying before, the crowd is so savvy. And I was remarking on the applause Alan Jerkins got coming into the winner's circle. It's just, it's fun to see that kind of thing.
And that's tremendous. That's something you don't see everywhere, and that's really, it kind of makes you feel very good about where we're at in the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discouraging talk about everything, but I think basically things are pretty good right now.
Saratoga is the balm that
right.
kind of gets rubbed over the industry every summer.
Exactly. Graham, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We know it's a busy time
Not
in
at
the
all.
morning
Thanks
for
for having me.
our trainer guests, but we thank you for the time, and thank you as well to George Weaver for joining us this morning on Capital OTB's The Inside Track. That'll wrap up the program. For Seth Merrill, I'm Jean Wood. Up next, it's Handicappers Report.